Here we are on top of our TotalBoat Sport Dory build again here, and literally up on top of it here is Willow. This is my new dog. Now she's a silver lab and she's about 15 weeks old. I've had her for 3 or 4 weeks and she's fantastic. Don't be surprised if you see her roaming around in the background of some of our videos because you know, she's stuck with me now and I'm stuck with her and we both like it. So this is it. This is the way to go, having a nice little dog for the shop, just like this. So the next thing we're going to do really is prepare the Garboard planks that go onto the bottom of this boat and get glued on here. But before I do that, I'm going to finish routing the slots for the frames and just continue on from there. I've shown you how easily this jig sets up and how it all works, but you know, it really never dawned on me how really well it works, especially when you're moving from frame to frame and just trying to get the job done. You know, it takes no time whatsoever to set it up. I guess, you know, each individual frame happens so quickly that it comes out so nice and neat too. Look how nice and tight they are, really, really nice. There's a little tiny burr along the edge that you can almost remove with your fingers, but I'm using a scraper to remove that a little bit and just tidying it up and sweeping off the dust. And it looks great. I just say that, well, you've seen the slots that we cut for the frames, and obviously these are the frames that we're going to use. These are high-density polyethylene, and it's 5/8 of an inch by 7/8, and I'm just going to set it in the slot like so, and it fits in there nice and tight, but I'm going to saw it off, but I don't want it to migrate while I'm sawing it off, so I'm just going to clamp it down so it can't slide. And then just take a simple hand saw, and off it goes. You've seen me use this flush cutting technique in other situations now. It works really well. You just keep a nice pressure with your left hand on the heel of the saw, guiding along the surface. And you just don't want that to rise up, otherwise the teeth are going to cut down and scratch up what you're guiding from. So, you know, you have to be careful, but it works out really well. And the plastic saws a little slowly, but it does saw nicely. Look at that, just like working with a piece of wood. Nothing to it. I'd like to show you a little bit more about this composite bottom and Garboard planking setup that I've got here. And what I've got right now is one layer of cedar on top of my false bottom. Now it's just laying there and it's got a nail in both sides of it, just try to position it so it doesn't slide around. I've cut all the slots for the frame in it. And you can see right here that I've placed one of the frames in one of the slots and it fits nice and tightly in there. And the whole idea of the slot is so that the bottom end of the frame, the bent frame, and doesn't just end in the middle of nowhere and have a rivet or something holding it down, because you can bang into it with things and start moving it all around. With these and these slots, they're not going to move at all, believe me. They're in there solid. And next thing I'm going to do really is glue one layer of Garboard plank on top of that bottom like so. Now I've got to isolate between the false bottom and that bottom so I don't get the whole thing all glued together. I'll remove that bottom and do some taping and isolating before I do this, but once I've done that, I'll glue this onto the bottom like that, and then I just take a block plane and just chafe this right off nice and flat and smooth it right up and just prepare it once that glue is dry. And then I'm actually going to fit the next piece of bottom and the next piece of Garboard plank before I do anything else. They'll all be made and fit, and then I'll remove those and I'll put a piece of carbon fiber over this first seam like so, right down to the edge right here. And believe me, that's going to strengthen this corner right here, because this corner right here in Dory's really is the most vulnerable spot in the whole boat to leakage or problems right here. The side planking's very hard to keep nailed onto the bottom in a traditional fashion, and you've got stitch and glue and all different kinds of things, but I just think that in my lifetime I would put one of these boats through much more abuse maybe than a lot of people would. I jump in the bottom and we land them on rocks and drag them up and down the beach, so it's got to have some requirements. I want a nice heavy bottom, 2 layers of planking on the Garboard, and this is the way we're going to accomplish it. So I've put 1 layer of carbon fiber over it, then I'm going to put another layer of bottom planking on it like so, and that's going to hang out and get glued down and then chafed off and everything. And then basically we've got another Garboard plank that's going to go on it like that. Now basically what you've got here now is 2 layers of Garboard plank and 2 layers of bottom planking. Then I'm going to take another sheet of carbon fiber and I'm going to put it so that it ends right at that corner like that. And that one there is to just strengthen the bottom itself. So at this point, you're going to have 2 layers of carbon fiber on the bottom, 2 layers of cedar, and I'm going to cover it up with 1 more layer of cedar like that. So now the bottom is triple thick, and believe me, that is strong and yet still nice and light. And then what I'm going to do is take another layer of carbon fiber and Kevlar and put it right over the whole thing and resin it down, and that is actually going to come up and protrude right into the overlap where the first broad strake laps up on top of the Garboard planks. And that really is going to be an incredibly strong corner. It's going to be light, it's going to be strong, and I just think it's a fantastic way to go. The next thing I'm going to do is just break this down, and I'm going to show you how I came up with the shape of the Garboard planks using a pattern. This may look familiar to you right here. This is the same method that I used to transfer the shapes of the body plan onto the molds. Now in this situation, I just have to be very careful to place that head right on the angle where it runs out onto that first layer of bottom. And you place it on there carefully and tap it into place. It taps in there really easy because the cedar is very, very soft. You might notice that I've had some of these nails in position before because I was kind of checking out the system to see whether or not I could transfer that line onto the back of the pattern, and it works fantastic. So we're setting up to do it right now. It's a direct transfer system actually, and I'm using the head of these sheetrock nails. This is just to define the line between the Garboard plank and the bottom, and I'm going to use a different technique on the other edge of the batten. Now I'm going to pick up a piece of 1/4 inch ply, and it's cut bigger than I need it to be, and I'm just going to carefully place it down on those nails so it doesn't affect the nails or knock them out of position. And I have to make sure it covers all of those heads, and I also have to make sure that the plywood is covering the top edge of the batten beneath it. Now I'm making sure that that piece of plywood is twisted down there really nice and sitting on the heads of those nails that I put in there, and it is. So now I'm just going to take my hand and bang on the pattern and just drive the nails into the pattern. Like that. Now that's a direct transfer system just like I did on the mold. And the next thing I'm going to do is reach underneath with a pencil and draw a line on the top edge of the batten that I've got on there. That's the second line onto the pattern. I'm picking up tracing the batten. The first line I picked up with the nail heads. Now we're going to remove the pattern, and you can see that one of the nails is stuck into the back of the pattern, and all the other nails have made an impression in the back of the pattern, but I'm going to have to remove them from the boat and transfer them onto the pattern and just tap them into their little marks that they've made. And you want to tap them in there pretty nicely now because you're going to have to move this pattern around, and you don't want them falling all over the place. Besides, you're going to use them for something else when you get them to the bench. Now I've brought the pattern over and put it on the bench, and you can clearly see the curvature in the heads of those nails right there. That represents where the Garboard plank meets up against the bottom plank right there. That was a direct transfer method right there. And over here I traced a line under the first batten onto the back of the pattern. And basically what I want to do is just drive some nails along this line just to get a better look at it, see what it looks like. You can tell, I mean, the line's kind of hard to see, so we just put some nails on it like so. Now that I've put some nails on that other line that I traced, you can clearly see the curvature in this plank. And what I'm doing with that pattern is I'm using that pattern to get a piece out of stock. Now, the way I do it is I put a piece of stock down on the bench, and it could be, you know, quite a bit bigger than this actually, and have some sort of curvature in it that I think I can use. And then I just kind of look at this and hover it over the top of it and say, well, I think I can get that piece out right about there. So what I'm going to do now is invert the two. I'm going to take and put my pattern back on the bench again like that. and I'm going to set this piece on the top of the pattern, like that. Now I'm just going to make sure that the pattern covers all of the nails right here. I don't see any nails sticking out past it anywhere. That looks like that ought to be it. So what I'm going to do is press it down now onto these nails, like this. Just tap it down on there lightly, like so. All the way down to the other end, like that. And then I'm going to flip it over, and you can see that the nails have transferred into that. Now, a few of them haven't quite made it, so what I can do is just go ahead and put these back in the lines like this, right where they belong, just like that. And basically, I'm going to use that to draw a line around. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is take my plastic straight edge and hold it up against these nail heads. It doesn't have to be perfectly accurate either. But you can see that it's just bigger than we need, just slightly. Now that I've used the pattern to get this piece out of stock, all I really want to do is cut it out a little bit big, and then I'm going to bend it on there just like I bent the pattern on there. Exactly the same thing, and clamp it down real quick like, and just make sure that it's covering the joint at the bottom. I just got to make sure it's hanging over the bottom here a little bit, like that. Force it down. It's got to be up on top of this batten here, this batten, just like that. Now, I've got it forced down into position, and the top is already so close I don't have to do a thing with it. So all I really want to do is make an exact tracement now without a pattern on to this piece of material. This is the top edge of the batten right here. I'm tracing it on there right now. Like I said, it's got plenty of material. It's hanging over the bottom. Got it down nice and tight. Going along that batten with my pencil, and there it is, like that. Now I'm going to check the top again. Yes, it's fine. So there you go. I'm going to unclamp it. And I'm going to put a little reference mark on it here, just to make sure I know where it goes again. It goes right here, right alongside that, like so. Now, I've got a line on the other side of it, and I can take it over and cut that line with the bandsaw. When you're cutting a thin piece of wood like this on the bandsaw, you just have to be really, really careful, because it's so thin that if it wiggles around, or you let it wiggle around, it'll wander all over the place when you're cutting. So you have to be very, very careful, go very slowly. You don't want to cut past that line, because if you do that, it's going to cause you some trouble. So when you move your hands is when you're liable to make a mistake. So I'm very careful about pinning it down nice and tight when I go to move my hands and not letting it wiggle. And that way I can get away with it all by myself here. Now, I've got a piece of lumber on my bench right here. Now, that's not a piece I'm going to use. It's just a piece that was cut out earlier. And I'm going to set this piece right on top of it. I'm using the bottom piece as a spacer. I've got this piece spaced up off the table so I can take a block plane and tune this thing right up to the line that I drew. Now, if that isn't the easiest way to do that, I don't know what is. I don't have any problem trying to keep the plane 90 degrees to the piece. I don't have the piece clamped alongside the bench like this in a bench vise and then struggling trying to keep the plane 90 degrees to it. I just lay it on the bench like that, put a spacer under it, and the plane itself is 90 degrees. So it planes at 90 degrees almost effortlessly, and the line was very, very faint. The other thing is it's very easy for me to see the line because I'm looking right down at it like this. If I had it this way, I'd be always struggling trying to see the line and just having nothing but trouble. I can't even do it, and I've tried it all my life. So this is the way to do that right there. There is the first layer of our 2-layer Garboard plank right there. Now it's in 2 pieces. I've already scoffed it onto a piece back aft right here, and that worked out really nicely. That plank couldn't have been made out of 1 piece. It's got a tremendous shape in it. You can see it. When I take this off and lay this flat on the bench, you will not believe the curvature that's in it. So it's in 2 pieces because it has to be. It's in position. I'm really pleased with it. What we're going to do is actually just put the next layer of that 2-layer plank right down on top of it and trace it out right off of that using this kind of as a pattern. And we'll get that into position, and eventually we'll glue those together. But what I want to do is take you around up forward here right now and show you what I got going on. Now, I've got a little plywood pattern in here that represents the shape of the stem, and believe me, it's going to be shortly. I'm going to show you the stem that we've bent. I'm getting prepared to put the stem in position. Once I've got it all ready to mount, then I'm going to put it into position. Right now what I'm going to do is I'm checking to see whether or not the battens for the planking lines fare into the shape exactly right. I've had a few other battens on it already and everything's working out really nicely. So I'm getting ready to go, and there's going to be a lot of action coming up. Mounting the stem and the transom are things that I've wanted to get to, and I'm sure everybody else is ready to see it. So it won't be long now. Really, the next thing I want to do here is wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and hopefully everybody will get to our YouTube page and look at some of our previous videos, and maybe even take a look at our website at tipsfromashipwright.com. So happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and I can't wait to keep going, and just stay with us because we're going to just keep it up.